Hold on. This is not... I don't have my desk set up for this. I am not qualified to teach these classes, Caitlin.
You say that, but you said that when you were going to go teach last time, and you did fantastic, and you loved it. So I will be hearing no doubt coming out of your lips, Missy. Because you're fucking brilliant, and it's going to be fantastic.
Oh, it's just so technical, and I'm not a technical person. I am like a history and theory person, but history and theory has its applications, right?
And you'll figure it out.
I guess I'll figure it out. Yourself up to speed with what the students are doing and like ask them how you can best support them through the rest of the semester.
There you go.
So it's actually, I don't have to be perfect. This has been such a roller coaster of a day. Oh my god. That happened so fast, I'm still processing it.
You did it, baby. You can do it.
I'm so confused right now.
You're going on an adventure.
Oh my gosh. I know that these like unexpected things in life can happen, but they've never really happened to me because I've been so like controlled about every aspect of my life over the last 10 years. I have literally not, that's not entirely true, but I've been giving such like a half-hearted, half-assed attempt at like finding a new job lately. I've just been kind of like letting myself have the free time and throwing myself into like the creative hobbies. And then the universe just gently floated down like a leaf blowing in the autumn wind and was like, here you go, have this.
There's a casual like adjunct professorship. Go forth, conquer.
That's crazy. I don't even know what to say. I just got hired to be a teacher, to be a university lecturer, instructor in fashion. Unexpectedly. Out of nowhere, someone at a nearby university wasn't able to continue teaching this semester, so the department had reached out to me because I had previously connected with the person who's in charge of the costume collection at that university and asked me if I would be willing to fill in. So now I am teaching Tuesdays and Thursdays starting next week. I have exactly 1 week to prepare to teach these classes, and I am stunned. So life can change at any second is what I'm learning as I grow up. This happened literally so fast. I got an email at 12:15. It is now 3:30 and I'm filling out the new hire paperwork. No words. No words. Please excuse the hair. I know it does not look the best. I haven't scrunched out my cast from my hair product yet, but I am currently in the parking lot of my new teaching position. This is my first day. I just wanted to document it real quick, to just be here, have this moment to look back on. I am super nervous. Hopefully everything goes well. Cross your fingers for me and I'll report back when I can. This day was such a whirlwind that I did not take any vlogging clips aside from this little clip that you see here, and then I took a bunch of photos of campus as I went around and explored. And that's essentially what this day was about. It was about getting me familiar with campus, getting me some of the resources I needed, like a laptop and an ID, and then I had the opportunity to visit the historic costume collection, which I've been meaning to do for a while, and see what they had on display, as well as get to actually see the collection, which you will see later on in this video. And then the rest of the day was really dedicated to just meeting the students and sitting down with them to learn about what they were doing in their classes, where they were in the semester, and essentially what they could learn from me and how I could deliver that to them while still respecting the fact that they had put in a lot of work already this semester on the coursework and the projects that were initially what the classes were about. So it was this really interesting negotiation process of trying to figure out what I did know and could continue to teach based off of what the professor left behind for me, and then what new things I could introduce to them. The students were all very engaged, very nice, and patient with me as I came in as this new instructor disrupting their semester, and it left me feeling excited and optimistic about the rest of the semester. Okay, so I am in the historic collection right now. I am looking for some examples of different types of textiles to show my textiles class, because I want them to be able to see a historic difference and see like the historic evolution of the way textiles have been produced, and like the way quality changes over time, and what people have valued in the past versus what we value now. And I'm also going to do the same for my merchandising class, as well as my apparel product analysis, and especially for apparel product analysis, because I want them to see how all of these beautiful garments are constructed, so they can learn about like the history of quality of garments, especially given the rise of fast fashion. So I'm currently here picking out garments and textiles that I will use to teach my class. And I need to actually go get my laptop to do that, but anyways, that's what I'm doing. I also have to say that it took me quite a while to feel comfortable vlogging in and around campus because I was so new and I don't think anybody knew that I had like social media and YouTube channel. So until we jump forward until November, I don't have any clips, but I do have a lot of photos because I was taking photos every single time I was on campus so I could remember what it was that I was doing as I was teaching. So I spent a lot of that time in the historic costume collection that this campus has, trying to get a little bit more familiar with what's in the collection, where everything is stored, and getting to look at what objects are in there. I also had a lot of fun getting to utilize the historic costume collection for my classes as well, because many of my students, even though they were in a fashion design and retailing program, had never been to the historic costume collection. And historic collections, museums, archives, these are places that are full of not only information but also design inspiration. So it was truly an honor and a pleasure to get to be one of the people who showed many of my students a historic collection for the first time. I also got to spend some time in there by myself and thinking about what kinds of themes and research subjects I want to explore through this collection, and it's just a place that I feel really inspired by. I'm not necessarily like an objects-based research person. I am much more of a social and cultural anthropologist, so I like to talk to people and how they interact with these objects, but nonetheless, it definitely got me thinking about some interesting ideas for future exhibits. And even if I don't stay at this campus, it was still just like a really lovely chance to get to sit in those like positive and exciting feelings about being in an institution. Yeah. I got to spend some time in a historic costume collection today, as you can see behind me, and anytime I get the chance to hang out in a costume collection, there are always two things that come to mind. The first one is the presence of disability and invisible disability in a historic costume collection, or the lack thereof, but the one that's on my mind today is the evidence of hands in fashion. Something that we have really lost in our modern understanding and conception of fashion is the fact that hands touch every part of the fashion production process. If you think that your clothes are made by some kind of machine like a printing press, but for fashion, you would be absolutely wrong. Every part of the fashion production process uses human labor and human hands. So whenever I am in a fashion collection, one of the things that I'm always looking for is evidence of those hands. Even when things are machine sewn, there are still maybe some hand finishing stitches, maybe there's a mistake in a line of machine stitching, maybe there's buttons that were hand sewn, but those are things I'm always thinking of. And I have an exhibit idea based on this, and I hope I get to put it on at some point in the future, because especially in universities and colleges that have a fashion program, I think it would be really cool to connect the idea of hands being present in these clothes and connecting that with the hands of the students who are producing the fashion designs in these programs. So that's what is on my mind today as I'm sitting here looking at these beautiful historic garments. So yeah, that's it. Thanks for listening. I have never driven through snow before, so this is gonna be interesting and a little bit terrifying. I am on my way to the last class before Thanksgiving break, and then after that we only have 1 week left, and then they have finals and we don't meet for finals. So I'm like nervous about driving in the snow, but excited to teach. So yeah, okay, let's go. I'm a little bit scared. I guess I can't go anywhere until the ice melts off my windshield. Call me stupid, but I have literally never driven in the snow before, so this is a first for me. I'm glad I left early. So for the most part, the word vintage didn't really join the, let's say, American lexicon until sometime around the 1950s. Before then, the idea of secondhand clothing was really rooted in this idea of poverty, and it was stigmatized because of that. You didn't really wear secondhand clothing unless you were somebody who couldn't afford to either make your own clothes or have your clothes made for you. So secondhand was viewed as charity, and old styles that we now might consider vintage were associated with things like low socioeconomic status. This was especially true in the 1950s. Why? Because in the 1950s, we had a bit of an economic boom after leaving World War II, and it was seen as like your national duty. It was your American identity, and it was heavily marketed to consume and to consume new things, especially to consume new things that were American-made as a way of boosting the American economy. Then as we move into the 1960s, we go from this idea of resale and secondhand as charity to youth style. And the thing is, youths, like many of you, are often responsible for like these bigger shifts in cultural understandings of fashion and styles. And so in the 1960s, when youth style starts turning to the thrift stores and the resale stores, secondhand and charity shops to find a new style, there then becomes a distinction between the idea of thrift and resale. In the 1970s, according to this one study that I am basing this PowerPoint off of, vintage goes quote unquote mainstream. This means that the term vintage is being used more often, especially in newspapers, as well as just other media that references like secondhand clothing and vintage clothing, with things like guides to finding vintage clothing being published in magazines and newspapers. However, there is still no like real consensus on what the word vintage means. In the 1980s, there is a bit more of an establishment, and as we kind of discussed in class, it's the idea of something that's around 20 years or older, and then that term begins to diffuse and being reported on by fashion publications more frequently. However, I think we should still think about the changing meaning of the term vintage, because like I posed in the first slide, the question, why do we have a term vintage and a term secondhand? What is the difference between these two things? Fisher argues that, in a sense, the term vintage represents a semantic attempt to claim authenticity for genuinely old clothing and objects, distinguishing them from retro reproductions, as well as serving as a marker of distinction from contemporary secondhand clothes. And this is where that true distinction really lies between vintage, genuinely old clothing, and secondhand or retro. Vintage is not just old clothes or hand-me-downs or secondhand clothing. Vintage is something that is authentically, genuinely old, and that there's something specific about that garment that makes it more valuable than simply a secondhand garment. Part of that is its age, but another part of that is its perception of being representative of a particular decade of fashion trends, or there's something unusual about the garment, or maybe it's a rare piece, a collector piece, a luxury piece. I think you get the point. It's that it's not just an old piece of clothing, it's that there's something genuine and authentic about this old piece of clothing. But the term vintage is also kind of changing since that article was written. Our language changes through time and has been made complicated and also accelerated through social media platforms. Specifically on Instagram, you will find a whole host of different terms to refer to things about vintage, like retro vintage, true vintage, vintage fashion, vintage style, vintage thrift, and more. There's also secondhand fashion, secondhand style, there's new vintage, there's so many examples that I can't even think of them all. But before we get to the part about like sourcing vintage and retailing vintage, I want to talk about the idea of consuming vintage, because this is, after all, something that we buy and wear and consume. Like, that is the process of consuming. As with any course about fashion, retailing, and merchandising, part of what you need to know is your target demographic. Who are you trying to sell to? So I think it's important that we consider why consumers choose vintage over new fashion, right? And that is just a little taste of some of the lectures that I've been giving. I find it a lot easier to lecture when I have a fidget toy in my hand. For some reason, it helps me not lose my train of thought. But I've been thinking about maybe like live streaming lectures, perhaps. So if you're interested in something like that, let me know in the comments. But I gotta go because class is gonna start soon. Oh, you can see it land on my hand. That's exciting. I know eventually the novelty of snow may wear off, but I don't know about that because I lived in New York for 2 years where it snowed every year and I never lost the novelty of it. So you never know. You never know. This is your sign to keep your childlike optimism and like wonder and awe of the world alive today. Can you tell that I have a favorite color? Good morning, it is Monday, December 2nd. I almost said 9th, what? It is December 2nd. This is the last week that I have in person with my students because the week after this is finals and they do that online. So this is the last week of instruction face-to-face with my students. We have final presentations. I'm going to have a couple of people that I know from industry come and give talks to my class. It will hopefully be a relatively like chill week. I had a lot of autonomy to change things around in the syllabus when I came on as the instructor for these courses. So I have attempted to relieve a lot of the pressure and the anxiety that I think the students were feeling with all of the like unknowns that were happening in the classroom. I am looking forward to their final presentations. I'm looking forward to getting to spend some time in the historic collection again, which by the way, I have an update to share with you later, but for right now, I have some job things to attend to. On Mondays, I have my every other week meeting or bi-weekly meeting with Kate at Accepted Society, where we just kind of check in and see what's going on with the company, what projects I'm working on and things like that, because I am the community liaison for them, which I greatly enjoy doing. And then I also run the brainstorming session for Accepted on Mondays and then a co-working session for Accepted on Mondays. And that is usually when I spend some time lesson planning and working on YouTube videos. So that is the plan for today. And then tomorrow I will take you guys with me for our last week on campus. Let's go say hi to Kate. And also check out my new sweatshirt from Tired Girl Apparel. I will leave a link below. Not sponsored, I just thought this was genuinely hilarious. So go check them out. Anyways, let's get to work. It's also snowing today, which makes me super excited. Just a light dusting. You probably can't see it on camera, but it makes me very happy. My handy dandy notebook, which goes with me everywhere. And it's the only planning tool you need as an ADHDer in my personal opinion. Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing all right. How are you? You've changed your background again. Say hi.
Hi.
Oh, it's not focused. There you are. Hello.
Hey. I'm actually going to do the same thing because I'm supposed to be vlogging today.
Okay, here's the thing. I have not been working. I have instead been knitting this shawl, as you can see here, because I've been so close to being done with this and I needed the needles for another project that I was like, I couldn't stop myself from finishing it. So I have taken it off the needles and I still have a couple of things left to finish, but that means I haven't been doing any prep work for the week. I finished my meeting with Kate, and I am just severely distracted by crafting projects because the thing is, I may be a professor at this exact moment in time, or an instructor, whatever you want to call me, but I still have ADHD. So what I'm thinking I'll do is that it's about 11:20, which is like past the cutoff that I usually give myself for taking my ADHD medication, because it is a stimulant, and the later in the day that I take it, the more likely it is to interrupt my sleep at night. But I have a lot of thoughts going on in my head, a lot of projects that I want to work on, a lot of things I want to share with my students, and it's all just feeling a little bit overwhelming. And I think that if I take my medication, I might be able to kind of grasp those thoughts a little bit easier and make sense of them so that I can actually get something done. So I think that that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna also eat a little bit of food because it is nearing lunchtime, and we will then sit back down at my desk and see what happens. We will just see what happens. So wish me some luck. Also, look at how cool this shawl pattern is. I am currently opening up the rest of these lines where the stitch got dropped, and then I will have a finished shawl. Okay, medication, food, work. Let's do it. that was my classroom for my first class. I'm now in the textiles lab, and I have a bit of a break before I teach my next class. We're having a guest speaker. If you remember Cameron Williams, he's one of my besties from grad school, so he's going to come and speak to my class. They asked for a stylist, and he is one of the best stylists I know, so he will be joining us on Zoom. But before that, I think I'm gonna go grab myself something hot to drink because it is like 18 degrees today. Let's see, what time is it actually right now? It is not time, temperature. It is 21 degrees right now, and it was definitely colder than that when I got up. So I am craving something hot to drink, and I think I also forgot to grab my meds, so my ADHD meds, so I might actually get something caffeinated. So yeah, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna go set up in the other classroom, have the Zoom call with Cameron, and then it's on to my third class. Not actually listening to anything. It's just so cold that I needed my headphones as earmuffs because I don't have a hat, and I also forgot my scarf. Not the best day for going for a walk, but we soldier on, as I say. And then I was, you guessed it, back in the collection. I am, in fact, obsessed with the collection, even though, like I said, I'm not much of an objects-based person. There's something about being in there and being around all of this old clothing that just gets me, like, so excited. I mean, I went into archaeology for a reason, right? Like, I have a love of material culture. I am just still trying to figure out in, like, what way I love material culture. But anyways, that was me taking a look at an old basketball uniform from the university that I was working at, and then I was also checking out the beading on this 1920s flapper dress. From there, I also wanted to check out the library that's in this costume collection to see if there was anything that I thought I should read. I didn't take anything with me because I actually have a stack of library books from my local public library that I need to read, and then again I spent some more time looking at the objects on the top rack. They are organized by year, so the older things are on top, and I have to stand on this ladder to get to them, so I don't get to spend as much time with them as the rest of the items. So I wanted to take this chance while it was out to look at some of the details. I really love looking at lace, and this piece was really interesting because it was from the Missouri Historical Society, which also has a really big costume collection that I've seen before. And then it was on to my last class where I had Cameron give a talk about sustainability and his work in politics and his work with the sanitation department in New York. This is my first true Midwestern winter, and I am so cold all the time that the only thing I can wear these days is big chunky sweaters and every piece of knitwear I've ever made. Which, by the way, check this one out. I just finished it last night. It's a little pixie hood inspired by like the 1940s hoods by Fable Knitwear. I am really into knitting again. I've always been into knitting, but I picked it up again. Anyways, that is not the topic of this video. Hello, it is now December 13th, and it is the last week of the semester, so my students are hopefully like at home finishing their finals and having a relaxing moment because the 13th is like the cutoff date for all of the assignments that they had due for me, and I'm not forcing them to take a final. The final that was left for me was a cumulative exam by the previous professor, and I just didn't think it was fair to like give students a cumulative exam based on information that I didn't teach them. So nixed the final, and whatever grades that they have from their assignments are going to be their grades. So I should have grading coming up shortly, but I wanted to round off this vlog with a little bit of a reflection and just like a moment to chat about what's next. So The first question that I keep getting is whether or not I'm going to be back next semester. And that is a great question that I really wish I could answer, but I don't have an answer for that right now. I haven't heard anything yet from the program director or the dean. I also know that they're kind of going through a change in deans right now, so I'm also like not sure who to talk to at the moment. This is a tenured track faculty position, and you need to have a PhD in order to become tenured faculty or have like 10 years of teaching experience, and I have neither of those things. So I don't think I'll be asked back for this position, which I'm okay with though. I am glad for the experience of having taught these students. I'm glad I was able to like be there in a moment of crisis. I'm glad that they thought of me, and it also meant that I was able to develop a closer professional and working relationship with the people in the area who are doing like work and research and stuff with historic objects here in the Midwest. Because before then I'd only had like some brief meetings and I'd never been to the campus that I've been teaching at, so I'm really glad that that happened. Maybe not glad for the students, not glad for the professor, but you know, it was a good experience for me and I'm grateful for it, I guess is what I mean. But the update that I mentioned earlier in the video and then did not update you on is that I was sent a listing to apply for by the program director for an artifact manager position in the historic costume collection. I would be responsible for like accessioning items, de-accessioning items, organizing classroom visits, helping with the exhibits, coordinating with the library to start a digitization project, so on and so forth. I have applied for that. I have not heard back about it. I suspect that finals and the dean changeover is taking precedent in the schedule right now, so as soon as I hear, I will of course be sharing that. So cross your fingers for me because I would really, really love this position. It's part-time, but that's also something I'm okay with because I also work for Accepted and I have some of my own stuff going on with like YouTube and that kind of stuff. So that is hopefully what is next. I would really, really, really love to work on that project, especially because since I have been teaching and getting to spend time in the historic collection, I have come up with some ideas for exhibits I'd love to work on. I have a couple of research proposals that I thought might be interesting to tackle. So I just think it would be good. One of the things I miss the most about being in school is having the structure of the semester system, because I tried to self-impose it and it didn't work. And I also miss having like essentially an excuse to do research. A really big thing about me and my ADHD is the fact that like if I do not have a reason, if I do not have a deadline, if I do not have some external force for something, it's really difficult for me to do difficult work, including research, which is why I've always enjoyed being a student, because I like to know about these kinds of things, but trying to do it on my own without a deadline or a professor to be responsible to or a conference that I'm presenting at, I just like won't do the work. It's a super frustrating experience, but it is what it is. So it'd be really cool to have like an excuse essentially to work on those things. So yeah, I think that that's pretty much it in terms of like teaching and what's coming next in terms of like employment and jobs outside of what I do is like a freelancer and contractor and like self-employed person, which brings me to the next thing that I mentioned in this video, which is the idea of doing lectures. I put together a series of lectures for this teaching position and I didn't get around to sharing all of them, and I would really love to share them, even the ones that I did get to share with my students. So I've been thinking about starting a live stream lecture series on my YouTube channel. I have to look into how it works, but what I envision it being is something that anybody can watch, but if you want to like be a student and engage in the chat and ask questions and things like that, you would have to have like a membership to my channel, because it is like a lot of effort and labor to go through something like a lecture. So I'd like to be compensated for that work, but I also am like excited at the idea of getting to engage with people who want to learn these things. And I think that the people who are going to pay for a membership in my mind are the people who are going to be like more engaged. I don't know if that makes sense. Like, tell me your thoughts below about that idea, that structure, and if you'd be interested in something like a lecture series. Perhaps that will give me an excuse to work on my research. Of course, like these could be video essays, but I find video essays, one, really difficult to make. They take a lot of time and a lot of effort, and I'm struggling to do them with my ADHD. And B, don't offer a lot of that back and forth engagement that I'm interested in having, because that is really where I get like enjoyment out of the process of teaching, is that like seeing other people understand and getting to have conversations and to like play out questions together. So that's really kind of the relationship, the dynamic that I'm looking for. So yeah, tell me your thoughts. But I've been talking for way too long. I think that that pretty much summarizes everything that I know and I have felt about this position. One last thing to add is that anytime I'm put into a teaching position, I am always surprised at how much more I know than I think I know, if that makes any sense. I always feel a little bit of like a bit of an imposter, like I don't actually know anything. But when I'm put in the position where I do have to communicate what I know and to answer questions, I always surprise myself by how much I remember, how much I know, and how much I'm like able to apply critical thinking in order to answer questions. So teaching has always been like a really big confidence booster for me. So yeah, that's the last thing I wanted to share about that. Leave me your thoughts about the lecture series in the comments. I hope that you enjoyed watching this video of my first like truly me teaching, not being a TA. I hope you're having a lovely December so far, and stay warm out there because it is like 15 degrees outside right now and I am freezing my little booty off. And yeah, subscribe, like the video, leave a comment, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.